tried to think of Aussie movies that solely focus on Aboriginal women as lead characters. The only other one I can think of is Radiance, starring Rachel Mazza, Trisha Morton-Thomas, and of course, Deb Malman. Whether or not in the whole film history of Australia this is the case, but as someone who considers himself a bit of a film fan and a whole lot of blackfella, that points out to me the rarity of movies where Aboriginal females are the sole focus of a film. What does this movie mean to you in relation to other works you have been involved in, either before or after? How special is it to you?
It was, to be a part of the Sapphires was such an honour, and I was so proud of the film when it came out. It was lovely to be a part of what laid the groundwork for the Sapphires, I believe, was Jeddah in 1955, followed by Radiance and Rabbit Proof Fence, and also Ivan Sands Beneath Clouds, who that's a bit more of a lesser known film, more of an indie film, but it's the same director who did the Mystery Road. Those are the films that sort of paved the way in terms of representation for Aboriginal women. But I think what was so special about the Sapphires was that it just gave back humanity to Aboriginal people, and that's where conversations start from, really. And it normalised Aboriginal families, because I think it's really obviously it's important to talk about issues that affect Indigenous Australians, but I think in order for people to understand the gravity of those issues, they need to be able to relate to those to that particular group, and that's what the Sapphires did. I had Indigenous and non-Indigenous people coming up to me and talking about how much the film meant to them. Because they just invested so much in those girls, and when they saw, spoiler alert, if you haven't watched it yet, I hope you have. It's when the cousin Kay gets taken, I think it's no small thing for the family. Like, I think it was really important for people to, I think people can, they can sometimes talk about the stolen generation and forced removal as if they're speaking about it very mathematically. Like, no, A, B equals C, like this needed to happen. And I think for people to see just how the weight of that through the generations, it was important to show that, and the film did it in such an incredible way, because they were charmed by the girls, the music, and the humour of it, but then all of a sudden they were just knocked for six when that story came up in the flashbacks.
I think the important, I'm much older than Miranda and Stephen, and I've done a fair bit of work. And for me, this film, I'm so proud of it, because when I first came across the story, I saw it as a stage play, and I just saw the joy it brought people. And I saw 2,000 people at the Melbourne Theatre Company, and they were standing on their chairs and they were singing and they were crying because they fell in love with these characters. And these are true characters. This is a true story. Yeah, we've got a few, we're taking a few liberties, but essentially it's a story of 4 beautiful Aboriginal women who love their families, who come from have this great sort of story tradition, whose story hadn't been told. And I just think that when Australia actually got told the story, they went, oh, we love this story. And I'm just, and that was always amazed me, that there's 1,000 more of these stories out there. So for me, it was a no-brainer. It was an absolutely no-brainer. I never predicted, I dreamt that it would be embraced the way it did, and that the Australia would fall in love with these girls. And when they did, it sort of gives you a bit of hope.
Yeah. Definitely. So the Cairns experience. I love to see a new mob there, and it had nothing to do with attending this flash function and there being famous people everywhere. but the fact that the world was seeing a side of us that a lot of people in this country, let alone the world, get to see. This is due to the fact that our image or stories get hijacked by people with little or no understanding or seeking to appropriate Aboriginality for personal gain, who want to use Aboriginal stories but not accept the responsibility if they get it wrong. Do you think it's a major problem in this country or one that's starting to dissipate?
I'll let you take this. You go first.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, you always go first. We'll know
Yes,
that.
you always go. Absolutely. Years of...
I think I think people, creative people in the arts are starting to realise that that when a story about any minority group that haven't been represented enough in Australian stories, I think they're starting to realise that it's more than just having, and particularly with Aboriginal stories, they're starting to realise it's more than just having Aboriginal people in front of the camera. They need people involved behind the camera as well, in terms of the writing and the filming and lots of things. So that because that cultural context is what is going to make the film a more authentic. Because I guess for me, I believe stories need to be, they do need to be honest in their depiction of people. So, and it's just not true to try and write an Indigenous character as if they're a non-Indigenous character, like to be colourblind. It just doesn't ring true for
or a perceived perception even of what an Aboriginal person is.
Yeah. So that's why that conversation is coming about, and it is growing. I think sometimes it can be a bit of it's not a fun conversation for me to have. Like I don't go out to be someone to start. I'm not out to be antagonistic, but I'm out to, just to speak to it. I mean, that's what's so lovely working with Rose and Ben at Goalpost, because they do understand the importance of that. And I think when you find like-minded people like that, that's who you gravitate towards.
And I think we're doing ourselves a disservice if we do not stand on the same plane together to tell these stories. I don't think that, I won't mention a very senior, very, very talented Aboriginal artist said to me, Rosemary, what you've got to remember is that you will understand to a point, but you never really truly understand. And even though that's really hard to hear from someone who has friends and works with many Indigenous artists, it's actually true. I am not Aboriginal. And so I can't, even the way I can't talk about experiences, all I can do is be the, try and facilitate, to help facilitate as much as I can. The greatest thing is that we're working together again, which is proof that we've grown, but I've even grown as a producer from Sapphires to here, in terms of how the relationship with Indigenous artists and Indigenous filmmakers and writers, about how it's about listening. It's just about listening, and I think we're just opening up that door to that listening, and it's because of things like black comedy and and the Sapphires and and Top End Wedding and other things that are coming through. I think we've got a way to go though.
Yeah.
I'm talking about from the white filmmaking community. I think that they've still got to understand that they're missing out, and there is no choice. Now I'm getting angry. I'm not angry, but I
Look
do
out.
think we need to. Yeah. Anyway.
Not only were you telling stories that were representing for actual women, you were telling a story that for most Australians wouldn't have even been a thought they may have considered. I can't imagine anyone sitting around going, I wonder if there were any Aboriginal female groups who sung soul, travelled overseas, and were surrounded by sexy American soldiers. Why was it important to tell the story on film, and did you think people would connect with 4 Aboriginal women going to Vietnam to sing for Americans?
I guess That's a very interesting question. I think what made the story so special for me was that, you know, as a 17-year-old seeing the same stage show, was that because my mum and dad always took me to see plays with Aboriginal people in them, with Aboriginal performers in them. But a lot of them were about certain things in the past that happened, and I think the Sapphires really showed, even though it's set in the 60s, like modern Aboriginal women, like it was starting to show that like women that were dressed in sequins, and you know, it was such a new thing, and it was about young Aboriginal women going off to achieve their dreams, and you know, these women weren't victims of their circumstance. You know, they just dealt with, you know, they were just dealing with what was happening around them. They were just with each other, and they grew stronger because of it. And I'd never seen anything like it, and I was just like, wow, this play is everything to me. Because I was 17, I was living in Darwin at the time. All I wanted to do was become an actor. It was my dream, and I thought, well, these women have made it possible for me. You know, if they've gone and done this, and this is based on a true story, then I can do this too.
Well, it's that thing that people are talking about now with diversity.
Yeah.
You know, that if you see it, you know, and then you believe it can happen.
Exactly. One of the most recently, there was a video that was shared, and it was on YouTube, and it went on social media, and it was these 4 Yolngu girls from Eastern Arnhem Land who were lip syncing to Sugar Pie Honey Bunch, and you know, these 4. You know, these 4 girls were all taking their turns to be in front of the camera, pushing, and one of them pushed them out of the way like Cynthia would, and I just started crying because I just thought, well, whether they want, like, irregardless of whether they want to become an actor or not, because they've seen these 4 smart, funny, charismatic Aboriginal women, they've gone, I know what my worth is, and I'm allowed to celebrate it gave a lot of young girls the permission to celebrate their Aboriginality, that it wasn't a detriment, that it was something to be really proud of, and it wasn't something that you had to explain to make someone feel comfortable. It was just a part of who you are, and it's one of your strengths.
Yeah, it was really, and it went quite wide, that sort of positive affirmation. When we were in Cannes, and it's a 2,000-seat cinema, it was the most incredible experience. So we're sitting, all the girls are there, and I'm behind, and there's about 20 of us in the team, and you couldn't hear anything. You couldn't hear anyone laugh or anything. It was really weird. It was like, oh, they don't get it. They really don't get it. This is going to be really bad. And the film ended, and it was just silence for a moment, and then they just burst into applause, and there was a standing ovation, particularly for the girls and for Wayne, for 10 minutes. But the most important, the thing that I remember most is, through the tears, was these line of African women who were in front of us. I don't know if you remember this. It was a lot going on. They turned around, and they were the first people to stand up. And they were, you know, these African women, and they stood up because they were seeing women of colour on the screen. And Cannes is really wasn't very representative, even in 2012. And it was then I just went, this is something really different. This is something that's speaking far wider than we can imagine, because it's showing experiences. There's people of colour, positive, heartwarming experiences. I still can see that woman. I reckon actually, there's a whole row, and it was one in particular. I think if I saw her in Brisbane Mall, there is a Brisbane Mall, I think.
Yeah, just outside.
Yeah, just outside. I reckon I'd recognise her. I could still see her face.
Yeah,
Wow.
That moment's time. And, you know, it's funny, I was just thinking with Miranda before, you know, the Blackfellas, the way we talk about with connection and stuff like that. And I think with them 4 girls, you know, what they saw with you doing, it made them feel like they mattered. And I think you cried and got upset because you felt like what you did mattered.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it was that,
And that's the thing, like, you know, none of the 4 of us still continue to have a really, really precious relationship because we knew that the film was bigger than us and that we, you know, we were so proud of it that it wasn't about our own ego. And the thing is, you know, while you do feel that responsibility to represent your community, it's also it's also feels and no one should feel that pressure, but at the same time, you know, if it's a positive one, if it's really empowering and reaffirming young women, then that's all you can ever ask for.
yeah, and it is great. And it's like you said that there is that pressure of it as well.
Yeah.
Like I notice a lot, you know, when I go, because I watch Jessica all the time on YouTube. But I don't see this. I don't see this with any other artist. But I always see there such a good role model, 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 such a good, you know. And even when people I put it on mine, I'm like, no, I'm the worst person. Believe me, you don't want me. But it is that pressure of going. It's that expectation that people place upon you to be a certain way, and it's like if you place people up here, then you're putting them up higher to fall.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm straying from these questions now.
Yeah. No, it's all good.
So, I think it's fair to say that the character of Cynthia has some of the most cracked moments. The line about "suck it off my ring" had me and my friend screaming when we first heard it. And when we first see her in the film, she's making noises that obviously aren't from a nightmare, which I have no idea about because of my innocence. But I do know that culturally, those noises can make some mob uncomfortable. For example, mob here in Queensland would most likely go, "Ha, shame job." Were there any moments of thinking about what mob might say, or did you just think, stuff it, I studied at NIDA for this, and these mob are going to see the best acting noises they've ever seen in their life?
I think it is really funny because people, I still get called out, like when I'm at the shops, particularly when I'm up in the Northern Territory, and I just get called Hasia, like so it still certainly happens, and it was really. What was really great about being what was really exciting about being cast as Cynthia, because it took 8 months. It was a long process, and I went every month. I'd just be sitting there going, "Well, I haven't got it. That's it. It's okay. It's fine. I'm not going to cry. I'm not going to cry." And then I get this call saying, "Oh, well, Miranda, we want you to come back," and I'm like, "No way." And so what was so great was that Wayne saw something in me. I remember being told at drama school that you're a lovely young lady, but you're not very funny. And they're saying you're obviously very polite, you're obviously very lovely to the people around you, but you haven't got a sense of humour. And
What lens were they looking at you through?
I think I did sort of, I did try to be on my best behaviour when I was at drama school, because, I knew that I just had one shot. So he didn't get to really, so I had a bit of armour on. So he didn't get to see that side, and it was lovely that Wayne saw that I had that. That I had the ability to make fun of myself, make fun of other people, and bring that to Cynthia.
Deadly. So, speaking of things cultural, you've got a director who's Butler, 4 leads whose respective clans are Bidra, Kukuyalanji, Larrakia, Jabi Jabba, and Bara, a writer who's Yorta Yorta and Wurundjeri, a cinematographer who is Kaitej, working on a film with other Aussies of all backgrounds that's mostly shot in Vietnam, employing Vietnamese, American and African-American actors, about 4 Yorta Yorta Wurundjeri women who go from country to soul music under the guidance of an Irish man. Were there any lost in translation moments?
Probably in Vietnam there was a fair bit of lost in translation.
Yeah.
That was absolutely wild, wasn't it?
It was really, really crazy. Yeah, I'll never forget that we were in one of the most busiest two highways in Ho Chi Minh, and we had to drive that Jeep across the two roads, and so all the rest of the traffic were just moving around us like fish. We had police there, and I was just like, where am I? Like, this was insane. I think.
Were you jamming up though, or no?
Did
it look like the other cars could come and hit you, or no?
Sometimes it was a bit scary because I was like, oh, that got a bit close, but they're just so used to getting clipped, and so they just there's just no order whatsoever, is there?
Yeah, and I don't think anyone this film was shot in 30 days, including Vietnam. It was hardly a big long budget,
Yeah.
We have all the time in the world to do it. We blew Chris O'Dowd up in a day, and it was really full on. So these guys, when we went to Vietnam, it was 5 days of okay, let's do it, and it was incredible. It's something that I'm going to remember.
And the other thing was that it was so lovely that Chris comes on board, and he's just really loud and telling you what he wants, but then as he got to know us, and as he got to know the story even more, he started to realise the parallels with the Irish, which was what Tony and Keith had originally intended, that there are parallels with the Irish and Indigenous Australia. Well, there's similarities anyway, the solidarity's there, and he found that when he did the film, and so that was really beautiful for him to see that, him experience that, I guess.
My ex was Irish.
Hey, look
Yeah,
out.
I know, and he would get more wild than me. I'm like, hey, look out.
Hey, look out.
I said, yeah, I live here, come on. So in the making of, you stated, Miranda, that you had never wanted anything so much in your life as you wanted the role of Cynthia. Has something come along that has been a greater want or need in terms of acting?
I think what was so great about being cast as Cynthia and having this incredible experience on the Sapphires was that it made me realise the stories I wanted to be a part of, and because I went through drama school not quite knowing why I wanted to act. I just knew that I loved it, and I know that that's an important thing to carry with you because that's what's going to get you through the industry. But what I think it's really important to know what to prioritise and go, well, this is because that's the thing, that's the fire in your belly. And once I got that taste, I knew, well, these are the projects I want to be a part of. And because I loved it so much, I wrote a film with my mate Josh Tyler, and we went back to Gold Coast to try and get the film made, and we got Wayne on board, and it was like having the whole team again, and so it was really exciting. And so now that Josh has opened up this world of writing to me, it's just made me want to keep writing.
Solid. And Rosemary, I actually remember when they were holding auditions for the film, and from memory it lasted a while. You said 8 months, right? Yeah?
Yeah.
It wasn't that long, was it?
Mate,
I remember it going forever, because I knew all these people who were auditioning. I'm like, how are they still going?
Well, you had such a big, you were auditioning girls all around the country, so understandably, that's how long it's going to take,
It was so beautiful. Sorry.
Well, yeah, no. Yeah, you cut me out. Good as interviewer. So how far and wide did you guys travel, and how many auditions did you see, just to end up settling on 3 of the 4 leads being from Darwin?
That's actually true. We could have saved ourselves a lot of trouble if we'd just gone to Darwin. And I've spent a lot of time in Darwin, courtesy of Miranda, and I'm so in love with Darwin, I just wish I'd done that. But what we did is that we set up like a mini website, and we sent the links, and we went in and we connected with communities around the country. So we received very, very raw sort of footage of young girls and auditioning from Indigenous communities all over the country.
Wow.
So we had hundreds and hundreds of tapes sent that way. And it was incredibly beautiful and incredibly moving and inspiring. And so we, you know, Wayne Blair, who has to be credited as a wonderful, wonderful director, he is very, very rigorous. So he just whittled it down. He'd see some people. He brought some people in who were unknowns. And I'm sure Miranda won't mind me saying this, Miranda and Shari Sebens had literally just stepped out of acting school. And so we saw them, and we really liked them, but we didn't want to tell them too soon. We wanted them to wait 8 months. And so we spent months and months and saw hundreds of people. It came down to probably 6 people before we landed on the 4 girls. And of course we went, oh, they're all from Darwin, how convenient. Which it wasn't, because it was really low budget, so it was really not convenient, but they were the best. And I remember the day that we knew that we were just going to bring Shari and Miranda back one more time just to put them through some more pain. And I remember walking into the door at the casting agents, and there was Shari and Miranda sitting together, who were very good friends, like besties. And they were sitting there, and these 2 beautiful young actors looking at me, and I just knew that I knew we were going to give it to you. And they were there nervous as hell, and I thought, God, what mean. It's very mean of us.
Now, you mentioned Chris O'Dowd before. So how did he get involved? And like, what did he bring, not just to the movie, but to the overall feel of the shoot?
Yeah, well, I can tell you how we got him, and Miranda can give you the feel. When we were putting the film together and financing the film, everyone's always going, who's your star, who's your star? And they name all these like people who you'll never get on a movie in a pink fit. Like, you know, I think I was in a talk earlier and said everyone thinks that Hugh Jackman can be in every movie. He didn't return my calls. So
So rude.
I think he's a nice
So
guy
rude.
too,
and this has been publicised. So so we were going, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And so we sent Wayne on frequent flyer points to LA, and we had an LA casting agent, and she took him round to every single actor's agent, because he had only done short films, you know. And back to you. The story is about 4 Aboriginal women who meet sexy black men in Vietnam and sing soul music. Try and explain that to Americans who just think everything's in America and nothing's outside America. So Wayne went over there and did a song and dance, and he was at one agent, and they said, have you seen Bridesmaids? And he went, no, I haven't seen Bridesmaids. So he went down the road, saw Bridesmaids, saw Chris, rang and went, I think we found Dave. And that's how we found Dave. And bizarrely, not bizarrely, because it was a beautiful script and it was an incredible world, we rang Chris O'Dowd and we managed to say, you need to come over here and hang out with these gorgeous girls.
Because in the stage production, he's English, is he? Or is that right?
I think in the stage show they made him Australian.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But what was so great was that Chris really brought so much more to the role. He'd completely done a 180 on the character and decided to, you know, say, well, I think this is his arc. This is the journey I think he should go on, and it was all much more richer because of it. He was such a professional, turning up on time, knowing exactly what he was there for. Very meticulous about everything he did. And as a 24-year-old, like I was so, you know, it was my first film as well. It was really nice to see his process and how he approached the character.
So, from something funny to something serious. But when I learned about the allegations of Harvey Weinstein, I had this moment remembering him in an interview, and I cringed, wishing his name hadn't become associated with the Sapphires when his company distributed the film overseas. Watching the movie again, though, only just on Thursday night and some before, I realised that not even his name could take away anything from how much I loved the film. Did either of you have similar moments when the news broke?
When the news broke, I was just so disappointed. The thing was, Harvey was known for bringing indie film to the mainstream. He had brought the types of films that he brought forward, like Train Spotting, and I believe there was another incredible film which I can't remember. It's left me, but anyway, a lot of independent filmmakers had approached Harvey to produce their film because Hollywood just weren't seeing the potential of those films, and Harvey was like, well, this is such a unique film, and this is what Hollywood needs to see. It's the unfortunate thing is that he knew that power. He knew how many people looked up to him, how many people believed in him, and he abused it. And so it was such a shock because.
But you met him when you were over there promoting or anything?
No, we did.
No?
I didn't know. I didn't know until much later, you know. But I think it was just I think it's
He can't stay in this movie. It's too good.
Well, that's the thing, you know. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's what we do need to remember is that like people in America saw it, and like prominent African Americans like Whoopi Goldberg, and Whoopi tweeted like everyone needs to go and see this film, and I lost my mind. You know, I just think it was because people don't know enough about Aboriginal people. They think they've all gone, and or that they still live out in the bush. And I think that's what made the Sapphires so special when it came to America.
I think the word is like heart. It had heart.
It had so much heart.
And it was about family, which is universal. And
it's
and
like
a movie that got heart, we feel for it.
And it's like what you said, because of, you know, we did have African American actors in the show. We did have parallels of the civil rights movement within the film, and we were obviously acknowledging that we were singing soul music, which African American people had created. So, you know, people really appreciated, Americans really appreciated that because of it being able to go to America.
Now, speaking of moments, I had one of the opening moments of the film that related to some recent controversy. Those beautiful shots of fields with little ones running through them were introduced to the characters, as well as those played by Kylie Bell and Auntie Lynette Narkle. And I look at these beautiful Aboriginal women of all clans, shades, ages, and I think of Trevor Noah and his joke about Aboriginal women not being beautiful, that people haven't seen a beautiful Aboriginal woman yet. The first thing that pops into my head is, excuse me for this, but fuck you, Trevor Noah. The second thought is for someone who always goes on about social justice, he only demonstrates how colonised his mind is in terms of what beauty is. And then I get sad not just for Aboriginal women, but women, because I realise that in the history of man, if people wanted to talk about how ugly a country was, they would use its women to relay that message. How do we get people like Trevor Noah to shut up by way of film? Because they'll just open their big mouth more if we tell them to shut up, but if we use film, how can we do that?
I mean, that's partly. At first, when I wrote Top End Wedding with Josh, he just said, you know, you spoke about loving romantic comedy so much. You spoke about how much you loved the territory. So why don't we go and create this film together? And at first, I just loved the idea, and thought, oh, this sounds like so much fun. Like let's go and write it. But then I started to realise as we joined forces with Rose and Goalpost, as the story started to grow, I started to realise, oh my goodness, of course Trevor's going to push these tropes around because one, not only is he trying to take advantage of who's in the audience, for him to feign ignorance that he had no idea of the gravity of it is a massive lie, I think. But I thought, you know what? I can either get really angry about this, or I can actually keep writing this film about an Aboriginal bride and a man that loves her for who she is and everything that comes with that. And because, you know, I think it's about time that a film subverts that trope. I think...
Yeah, that it still exists, like, it's crazy, isn't it?
It's crazy that it still exists. It's amazing that he thinks, who's not gonna know about this? And then he forgot about the internet.
But he steals jokes anyway, so...
Exactly. But I think in this, for me, what I've said to people that have said, well, Miranda, like, should you and other Aboriginal women be censoring Trevor Noah, or should you just be allowing him to throw ideas up in the air and let him do his job as a comedian? And I say to my friends that say that, that's part of the gig. If you're an artist, you're always going to be saying something that people might not like to hear. But with this, there was no, this is not something that's, there's no grey area for this. Like, it was offensive for him to say, and if you're an artist, you're going to be critiqued. The work that I do gets critiqued all the time. There's lots of reviews. Some of them can be really, really harsh, and you don't want to hear them. But if comedy considers itself an art, then they're not exempt from criticism, and neither is Trevor Noah.
Excellent.
So good. Yeah, and I think too, part of the thing was, like I said, you know, he sets himself as a person about social justice. And I don't know if you've seen a wonderful movie called Pride. Oh, yes. I love that movie.
I love Pride.
And it escapes the name of me, the main character, Mark. But he said a beautiful thing that I love. And it's, if you haven't seen it, it's a story about a young gay man, and he sets up with gay people, and they go to the miners who are on strike because of the Margaret Thatcher era, and they take food to them and they raise money. But I was watching the special features, and he actually says, you know, he says something along the lines of, you know, it's quite logical for me to say that I will fight for gay rights, you know, and say I fight for equality. And he said, but if I'm only limiting myself to gay people, he said that I'm not really fighting for all people. Yeah. And, you know, I love that. And I think that's true. Like, you know, people, we can often think that sometimes if we have something of ourselves, like now that he's got a job in America and he's, you know, free of all the things that happen in South Africa, it's, yeah.
But and just the fact that, you know, there is, you know, what he was talking about Aboriginal women, but also and he was talking about women. Why is women's beauty or physicality, why is that comedy? Like,
exactly.
We've spent hundreds of years as women of being the butt of jokes and being used in a comic way. Trevor Noah, of all people, not only, it was totally and absolutely offensive to Aboriginal women, and actually to all of us that he did. Yeah. That's not just Aboriginal women. All of us are offended for that. But why, you know, in this era, we're still talking about women and their physical looks and making that a joke? Like, really? It's very, very old-fashioned.
Speaking about their worth as well.
Well, it always relates to beauty. That's a person's worth.
Yeah.
But what is beauty? You know, it's these things that we see on magazines all the time. You know, like like I have mob where I look at photos, and I'm aware because of racism that if I put these photos up on Facebook with my mob, there's going to be people who go, you know, will make fun about that. But to me, it's the most beautiful photo of mob laughing or something like that. You know what I mean? So
yeah, but that was the power of the Sapphires. You know, we're not curing cancer. We're not doing, you know, we're not.
You're curing a type of cancer, I think.
Yeah,
You're helping to cure.
But that's what's so important. Like, you know, Aboriginal girls were able to look at themselves in the mirror and go, yeah, I feel beautiful in my own skin. It might not be the kind of beauty that's on the cover of magazines or that's on TV.
That's everywhere. That's that overwhelming
everywhere,
example.
every day. Like
exactly.
I don't look like Kate Moss, but I'm beautiful.
I look like Kate Boss.
So
there you go. So another question. I would like to point out that 6 years ago, I was introduced by way of film to an actor who is an Aboriginal woman. And within that 6 years, I've learned that while she is an Aboriginal woman, she is most definitely a Larrakia Kadri. A sister girl, a daughter, a writer, an actor, a titter, a fiancée, an advocate, a presence, and she is a spirit who is much larger than the small shell that contains it. Which of those aspects, collectively known as Miranda Tapsell, influence you the most, and which aspects are we yet to see that the world needs to be or not be ready for?
Oh, look out.
That's a big one.
Well, I think that's why I became an actor in the first place. I had Aaron Pedersen come to my school when I was in year 8. I was 13 years old at the time, and up until then, all people could ever speak to me about was how short I was and how brown I was, and so most people would start conversations with me of, when are you going to grow, Miranda? Or why don't you identify with your dad's side of the family because he's not Aboriginal? Why do you not acknowledge that? And so there were lots of challenges like that in high school. But then all of a sudden, when I had Aaron Pedersen come to my school and we started playing drama games, I was like, oh my God, I can be this, I can be that. And people started to see, they were just like, whoa, what's going on with Miranda here? Like, she's always the first one up. We've never heard her speak like this. We've never heard her be so confident. And that's when I realised, well, I'm not... acting was something that made me really grow outside of my shell. And while I never want to push my Aboriginality or my height or my gender or whatever people define me as, I never want to push those to the side because that's the life I live. But what was really great was that people saw my, potential, I guess. They saw that there was more to me than just the short Aboriginal girl. Yeah.
Cool.
So that's very lovely of you to say.
And you've mentioned Top End Wedding a few times.
Yes.
I need to know about this. Why wasn't I in it? What could you tell us about it?
And how you laugh, but like not really.
I know, but at the same time, I'm like, yeah, media haven't went, yeah. I was going to joke before because I went to Ursula Jovich's place and I saw the wedding invite on her fridge door. And I was thinking, where's mine? But then I thought, she can't have someone sexier than the bride at the wedding.
Can you? Oh my God! Please just turn up. Like
I'll sing that thing like in the titters.
Like in just your white suit that you wore on Black Comedy.
Yes, there's little
like,
shorts.
You're ready to be out sexied.
But actually, that's what I would ask. Top End Wedding. Did that come from that idea of you actually now being engaged and?
No. It actually happened. It actually happened like well before. I was.
But the idea or the proposal?
The idea came first.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. So I was separate. Like I was single by the time I was single when I was writing the film, and
you sung it into existence.
yes, that's exactly. Yes, that was a great way to put it. And yes, so and then I met James, my fiance. So but I just already loved romantic comedies. Josh and I became friends because we were talking about our favourite shows, our favourite films, and so they were When Harry Met Sally, Sleepless in Seattle, Notting Hill, and obviously that you could. There's a lot of people that don't like romantic comedies. They just, there's a lot of people don't like that genre, but I love them. They bring me so much joy, but unfortunately, they are very, you know,
White.
they don't, you know,
They don't reflect your experience.
They don't reflect your experience, but not only that, love only comes to those that are heterosexual and and
or even the
those
fact that love happens this way and that kind of stuff.
yeah, exactly. So, but what's so great is that now that we're seeing Crazy Rich Asians and The Big Sick, and as well on TV, we've got Jane the Virgin and Chewing Gum. We've got people of colour that are showing how they love, the kind of love that they believe in, and you see them go on that journey. You see them fall in love, and it's just such an exciting time to be making a romantic comedy with Aboriginal people in it.
Have you seen a web series called A Chance Affair?
Ooh, does that have
Someone sexy in it.
Does it have someone very sexy in it?
Yeah.
Oh, look out.
It's Australia's first Aboriginal gay love story online musical.
Look out!
Wow. I'm going.
I have to say, that is long overdue.
That's a niche,
and
yeah.
it took
was a niche
you
one
to
for-
write it.
It was exactly. I had that idea. I just haven't got the man yet. Sorry, keep going.
You're going to write it into existence.
I'm going to write it. Yes. And you're going to be deadly and solid and everything.
Yes, yes.
I dreamed of that. But release date and all that kind of stuff. Like what's happening? Where are you at with the?
Where are we
Who
up to?
knows?
We've locked the cut. We're halfway through sound. Miranda's going to do some work next week. I've heard some music tracks that Miranda hasn't heard yet, which you'll hear very soon.
Very
Which
exciting.
are beautiful. And so we'll have it all done by December, and then we'll start to it'll be out in the world in April, and it's full of joy. Like the script that Miranda and Josh wrote had so much heart. So if you want to see a film with a whole lot of love and a whole lot of heart and some really gorgeous looking people and really beautiful people, and it takes you to places like Miranda thinks she said, well, you don't really need to be on every shoot day, Rosemary. You know, don't feel like you need to be. Why wouldn't I be? I went to Darwin, Kakadu, Catherine Gorge, Nipmaluk, Tiwi Island. I got to travel the whole of the top end of Australia with Miranda. And I have to say, she's being very humble about just being a writer, because we've produced it as well. She's a producer as well on the movie. And Miranda and I went on this little tour before we actually we started filming just to get permission. Like we did lots of, talking to communities and things, and also fundraising and other areas. So, oh my goodness, we had it down pat. You should have heard us. She'd be really good. She's, she can chat. And she'd be really good. And the best, I'm a bit off topic now, but we had so much fun. So we'd go into communities, we'd tell them about the film, the fact that they would talk about the Sapphires and how much joy that had given them, and to sit and go, well, this one's about love. And Miranda would talk about all these beautiful romantic comedies that she'd seen. And it was one time, because I was quite, it's quite nerve-wracking sitting among 12 Aboriginal elders, especially the women, and I'm sitting there like this, and they're looking at me, wondering if I'm, whether they could trust me. And then they all got up and they came round and they said, "Well, show us this fella you're going to marry," to Miranda. And I went, "All right, that's fine. They just want to check that the love interest is hot." And then they all. So Miranda got out the photograph of Gwilym Lee, who plays beautiful Ned, and they all went, "Oh yes, oh he's nice." Anyway, totally off topic. I'm sorry, Stephen, but it was a real
love the
journey.
story.
What baffled me was just like we were trying to be really respectful and go, we want to make sure that when we're on your country, that we're going to film it in the best lights. We're going to make, we're here to make the territory look great. We're not here to make fun of it. And they were like, yes, we give you permission, but where's this boy?
Yeah, who are you bringing here to film?
Yeah. And what was so funny was when we went to the Tiwi Islands, obviously we had the wonderful Libby Collins, who's Robbie's sister. Robbie was, I don't know if you watch Clever Man, but he was the star of Clever Man. So his sister was helping us out because of her ties to the community. And it's so funny. One of these older Tiwi ladies, she's about 80 years old, and she came up to the car where all the film crew were in. And this was prior to filming. We were just doing location recce's. She come up to the window and she's like, "What you mub doing here?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh, we are in so much trouble." And Livy was speaking to her in Tiwi, like saying to her, like, "No, remember we had this talk. I brought the film mob here. We're going to make a film in a couple of months. Like, remember?" And she's like, "Oh yeah, forgot." And I was just like, "Oh, thank goodness." Yeah. But she was still like, I think she knew, but she was still sussing us out, like Dorising. There's this saying on Tiwi called "talking hot." So they're speaking there, and they use that expression because they're not out to be malicious, but they just haven't got time to waste. They've got too much family to manage, so they just tell you really kind of forthright, and you think you're in trouble because they're just like, "Don't do that," and you go, "Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to," and then they're like, "No, it's all right."
So then, speaking of cast, who have you got on board? So we've got Ursula, mentioned before.
Yes,
Gwillem.
We've got beautiful Ursula and Gwillem. Gwillem will play Brian May in the upcoming Bohemian Rhapsody, so we're very excited to see him in that. The beautiful Shari Sebens has come back into it. I don't know if you guys know Elaine Crombie, but yeah, you do.
Yeah.
Elaine is this hilarious Aboriginal woman who was on 8MMM and Kiki and Kitty on the ABC, and she is just a riot.
She's hilarious.
And
I can't wait for the world to see her.
Yes, and so I really hope people see her and fall in love with her as much as I did in this film, because she's just very, very funny. So we had a very, very talented cast on this show, and it was so wonderful that so many of people in the community got involved. So all the Jarwin mob in Catherine, all the Mirai in Kakadu, and all the Tiwi on the islands. It was really lovely to have them involved. It was beautiful to watch young Aboriginal kids suss out what we're doing and be brought over to the camera and just see their eyes just widen, like, "Oh wow, this is how the magic happens," you know what I mean? And they were constantly saying, "What's this and what's that?" Not pressing anything, just wondering.
They're curious, yeah.
Wondering how things work. And it was nice.
We had a beautiful Murray Louis, Thursday Island Man, filming it, and that was what was really special about what Miranda and Josh and all the whole team created was, Miranda was there, it was led by these extraordinary Aboriginal people, and together we all made this movie where I really can't wait to show it to you. I really can't. We sneaked some of it at the movie convention, a couple of scenes, and all the Tiwi ladies came down. They brought the Tiwi ladies from Tiwi, and there was these 8 women, and they were told they had 3 minutes to sing a song. They were all in the corner there, and they're going, "We're not talking." They weren't talking to us, and they're mumbling. When they got in front of all these, all these sort of blokes from all the cinemas around the country, they sang for 10.5 minutes, and they merged all the songs together so that you couldn't stop them.
It was like a medley.
It was so funny.
That's like, I remember an auntie once, we did a thing, and she was meant to do 3 songs, but she finished the third song, she's like, "You mob want more?" And they were like, yeah. She'd do another song, but then like about 5 songs later, "You mob want more?" And it was kind of like, yeah. No worries, guys. Please thank Miranda Tapsell and Rosemary Blight.
Thank you.
And thanks for coming.